Welcome to the Infinity Loop group. I'm Riley.
I'm Krista.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey to connect and communicate and not project. The Necessary Nemesis. A wound is a sacred force, but only through mystical eyes leave it to the ego, and the ego will use it for personal gain. So I emphasize, turn your wound over to your soul, and it gets elevated to where it belongs, where it is shattered open. Carol Mace. Okay, so I love her as you do, but this is the only way to truly protect her. You will train her harder than any Amazon before her until she's better than even you. Wonder Woman.
So the first quote, I think, needs us to, it's such a good quote from Carolyn Mace about what we do with our wound. Because she really, she's very good with trauma work. And she's very much sees where we pull the wound card and when our wound is, when we over-identify with our wound and we let our ego, try to capitalize on it. So I just think that's a great quote for us to keep coming back to, of what's going on in society, of both looking at trauma and not using our trauma to identify.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And think that we need now special treatment.
So there's, to me, the healthy way of looking at this, and like it said, it's a sacred force, because the most terrible things are what forge us and make us into being such wonderful human beings, right? Like, the reason why you love anyone isn't because of the good times in their life. It's because of how they handle the bad times and how they come out of it. That's
what you really respect.
Right. I mean, well, that's what we appreciate. There's, as a society, there's nothing more we love than tearing people down, but we love more is a comeback story. And I think that's, we have that opportunity every time in our life with our trauma. Or we live in a very weird world right now where we are now giving power to trauma. For those that don't actually overcome their trauma, they don't become these interesting people. They roll around in their trauma and play the victim card, and we now celebrate that in another way. And I find that that's like the ego side of society versus the spiritual, evolving, and caring about progress form of society. But both have their own reward in some ways, maybe a superficial reward by playing the victim, but nonetheless a reward.
I'm just seeing how perfect that quote is for this chapter. Why what you just said, Riley, because how you said something about, how do you work with your wound, and that's really what the Infinity Loop, I'm about to sneeze, is about. And then the second quote
Bless you.
is so perfect because, this, to me, it's such a great quote because it's basically the Robin Wright character who is the aunt saying, I love Diana, Wonder Woman, just as much as you do. She's saying to the mother, let me train her. And the mother giving the blessing and going, you will train her and she will be better, but than even you as a warrior.
Well, it's that true love and compassion isn't always protection, but preparation.
Ooh.
Right? So to truly care about someone isn't about protecting them from the pain and suffering, because the pain and suffering is coming. That's kind of part of the human experience. It's about training them to have the tools to deal with that when it arises.
That's the divine masculine. That's the part that we do not want overprotective mothers shutting down.
Right.
That's what the father calls out so that the child isn't coddled.
Is something I was listening to, and it was about early development and the importance of roughhousing, and how roughhousing at a young age with the father can be a direct correlator to risk aversion later in life. And for men, that's one of the most important aspects to becoming successful in society is being able to take risks. And it's really interesting to see that something as simple as roughhousing at a young age and not getting that could be the difference between you not making healthy risks in business later on in life. And to me, that's just like that perfect balance of preparing ourselves for the challenges ahead versus, oh no, we don't want them to get hurt. Oh, we don't want a roughhouse because they might bump their head or cut. It's like, no, that's part of growing up is getting the wounds and healing from them when you heal quickly rather than later in life.
Oh, that's so great that you just said that. And so that's where we're going with this necessary nemesis. And as I'm just feeling so full doing this podcast, but that is the infinity loop view, is to see it like both of those quotes, is that what comes against us, that is not for us to hate. Because Robin Wright was her necessary nemesis of, I am going to kick your ass to awaken you, Diana, to your power of who you are. And Diana was just so feminine, but also had the divine masculine warrior in her.
Well, and I also think about this as that negative voice we hear in our head, and this idea about almost never fully getting rid of it, because it's also the thing that sharpens you, right? If you didn't have that self-doubt and push through it, then you know what I mean? And it's the steel sharpens steel. So then that dark voice inside of you, not only is yes, it's trying to bring you down, but it also is a tool that is sharpening you for you to be your best self. Because your worst self is inside of you as well, fighting the whole time. When you choose to step up to the plate and, fight the dark side of yourself, for lack of a better term, you are sharpening your own tools. You are becoming better at being your best self, because you are no longer running away from your worst self, but choosing to face it and sharpen your tools.
I love it. So this will be I will argue this concept of seeing even people who have been abusive, or situations that have all but taken us out, seeing them as necessary nemesis to awaken us to our greater power and force and capacity to love, than to see ourselves as the victim, is the difference between people healing and not healing. I'm somewhat annoyed with the quote, "Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger." I don't think it's accurate. Absolutes aren't absolutely true in every case. I think it should be edited to, "Whatever doesn't kill you can make you stronger or give you a shitload of PTSD." Along with PTSD that I accumulated after many experiences that almost took me out, I was often left with a gaping wound that predators scoped out and accessed in order to rape and pillage the tender terrain of my soul. In retrospect, maybe I was stronger, but I was limping, wounded, left with a compromised immune system, and fragile. But that state isn't the end of my story and doesn't have to be. While typing this, I realized I am stronger in many ways after these storms.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just think of when you said I was left
Don't
with
be
this
sorry.
gaping wound with that predator scoped out and assessed. I there is a reoccurring statement that I've heard from young people that are molested, that talk about once they are molested, people that are into doing that are able to spot them out.
Oh, it's absolutely.
And
They can pick you out across the room.
right,
They can pick you out
they
across the
know
room.
you've been taken advantage of, and they can probably do it to you too. And to me, I just thought of that as that same kind of thing of when you are truly wounded in the way that you are or you were and haven't healed, you're just a walking duck for the lack of, it's for the
Or
shooting.
not even walking. You're sitting
Yeah,
duck.
you're a sitting duck
to be shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
To be targeted.
It's just sad to see that energy is so palpable that people are able to suck on, to pick it up and feed on creating more trauma in someone's lives. And so this is why it's so important for us to be healing our wounds, because not only do we continue to suffer from our last wounds, but we leave an opening for someone else to come and take advantage of us more.
Yeah, I would say, now where we are in society, which is to be so celebrated, is like as soon as something happens, which usually we don't find out because there's so much secrecy around it because there's so much shame. But to deal with that as quickly as possible, because the pattern is set in place. Like I said about in the last chapter, what happened with my stepfather set a course for my life. And that is something to truly, the grief when you realize that was your path, and how do you make something beautiful out of patterns, to look upon someone's life. And really the answer is to do such deep work to come out the most loving, strong, self-loving, and giving your life to help other people in any way I can give my life. If it's to one person today, if it's 2 people a year, that they learn to break these patterns.
Beautiful.
The word is resilient. When I said what I was talking about, am I stronger? Maybe the word is resilient. I see it like going through natural childbirth. Pain is relative to that. I was able to surrender while going through labor with my first child, who was a couple pounds bigger than made sense to my tiny body. I was able to relax in the midst of it. What?
I was well fed.
Yeah. Thanks to my beautiful and compassionate labor coach. Strong, skillful, empathetic support is a key ingredient to getting through it without losing it, whether labor or life. And after conquering natural childbirth twice and not dying, I think pain seems pretty minor to me now. And I gained the lifelong skill of doing Bradley breath breathing through almost anything. And I think that there's something significant about that, because like Lamaze was this whole kind of dramatic, this almost distraction. And Bradley breathing is about surrendering and letting go, and that inner stillness, that it's so opening up and surrendering. Talk about being in the feminine, which I was good at. So I remember my labor coach going even like, oh, well, someone could hypnotize you so easily, because I just so surrendered, to her guidance. But that's something about the Bradley breathing that's just you're surrendering to. So there's symbolism in that. Things that freak other people out are just no big deal to me because it's happened in my life before. That's true. I don't get like re-triggered. I'm just like, get calm. Like I have been through so much of this. It's just, it doesn't even faze me. But the trauma has many of those events left behind feels anything but stronger to me. PTSD, shame, abuse, lack of self-love, coping skills that don't serve us, psychological struggles, vulnerabilities to people who don't have love as their highest aim in life, and defenses just don't feel quote unquote stronger to me. But then something happens. The necessary nemesis shows up and everything changes. NN, as I call him, shows up after we've worked our asses off to do all we can to transform our pain and not transmit it to others. NN shows up when we've tasted our power and know how to walk in it in a regal way. NN appears when we're a rugged warrior, humbled many times over from the repeated attempts on our lives. But we're not quite there. We're still not healed. Our wound is still there deep down that only the craftiest find and poke with a sharp stick. The pain is so great, even Bradley breathing won't help us. I heard Martha Beck talk recently about her book and the nemesis that arrives to come against the heroine, Diana. It's a necessary confrontation for the heroine to wake up to her power, creativity, and self-love. It tries to kill her, but doesn't. That got me writing this. I owe a lot to Martha. The necessary nemesis came and woke me up. It showed me my wound, my shadow, things I was ignoring in my life and heart. I had been kicked down one too many times. I didn't have it in me to realize what needed to happen to create a life that required me to be both courageous and aligned with all the ways I've been made and remade in these traumatic storms. And by that is he triggered the whole infinity loop. That's the thing. He woke me up to truly my highest through healing. My life was preparing me for the life that wanted to be lived, but I needed to be poked with a sharp stick to wake up to it. Our necessary nemesis is the storm that threatens to leave us maimed. We need strong, skillful, empathetic support. We need infinity to whisper in our ear and to find the deeper well that lives inside of us. We need to rise up and say, I was made for this. That's what Joan of Arc said. In that realm, myth, mystery, and all that may appear like madness transforms us. Our wounds heal, like the lame man who was healed when Jesus told him, get up, take your bedroll, and start walking. We too take up our beds and walk. We become the messengers who are strong, skillful, empathetic, and supportive, that look in the eyes of the lame man lying there and say, take up your bed and walk. That's how the bounce works. Life is more fun this way. The bounce is better than we ever hoped or imagined. And then we get to say, yes, what didn't kill me made me stronger.
So the questions here, it says, describe who or what has been your necessary nemesis in your life. So for you, obviously, you shared with that gentleman who was your necessary nemesis. Would you say that there's been any other big necessary nemesis
So
in your life?
I say I didn't know how to work with the necessary nemesis, but I see everything that's ever come against me as my necessary nemesis. That's why when I said in another chapter about, I don't know if I have to forgive anyone because I think I put myself in the situation, is I think everything that came against me, I always saw, I knew it immediately. It's like you take one look at yourself and you go, oh, that happened because I didn't speak up 10 times before because I was a coward, that I gave that person access. Oh, that was because
what you permit, what you promote.
What you permit, yeah. And then also grieving over things that I couldn't, like when you have abuse in childhood, you are a sitting duck. You don't know, like with there you can go, oh, I should have done this. It's like, no, when you're really in it like that, it's like, I could have done no other. I didn't have any capacity to resist to have spoken up and exposed my stepfather. I was in such cultic fear from my mother's domination over me.
Well, as a child, we don't usually have the tools or skills to protect ourselves from that trauma. And when we don't heal from it, we tend to almost seek that trauma out because that's what we're kind of comfortable with, sadly, at that point. I mean, I know that is definitely what caused me to be attracted to some more unhealthy people in my life that took advantage of me because of my own wounds and insecurities from my childhood.
Yeah, and I want to say a little more about, I'm just thinking, I mentioned my mom, and someone brought her up to me today. I felt like she had like a destroyer archetype energy, like she was trying to destroy me. And I want to be clear, I can hold that and I feel no anger, animosity. Like I only feel love and compassion.
Forgive them, for they do not know what they
do.
do.
It's like it's just her unconsciousness, and that somehow this was like, I see my life as such a gift, and I know that no matter what I've been through, I just immediately think about people. Well, part of that would be the way I was raised by my father, that was always making us very aware of the suffering in the world. So from a very early age, I knew how much. I mean, you could turn on the TV and you see all these little the ads for the suffering children.
Well, I would say that's so. It's so interesting because I find that there are the two extremes now with the suffering of the world. There is the people that really are torn up about it and are empathetic to those that are suffering, and really give it perspective and go, oh, I'm so lucky to just live the life I live. Let me be grateful. And then there's other people on the other end where it's like it's an excuse to complain and no longer see the positive in their life, but see it as if almost the negative that's happening to someone else is now affecting them negatively, and go, oh, I can't, like the inconvenience that someone else has to suffer and I have to deal with it now, instead of actually having compassion. It's like they're irritated that people are suffering in the world. It's not right. There's not this connection. It's kind of like
how messed up we are, how messed up the world is, kind of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, the amount of people that are using other people's suffering as a tool instead of having compassion and actually trying to solve.
Or
issue.
doing a deeper work in them. I never, ever, ever looked upon what I have or didn't have and looked at someone else and felt I was entitled to that, or I should have had that. Like I had this awareness, and I think that did help, that I, was so drawn to the mystics early on. And it's interesting, but
entitled. I think
it's the entitlement,
a big root of a lot of our societal issues. It's I say this obviously as a very large blanket statement, but from my experience, when I have difficulty with people, it's the poor people feeling entitled to the rich people's wealth, and the rich people feeling entitled to your servitude because they have their wealth, right? And it ultimately both come down to the entitlement and what the behavior that comes from that type of mindset, right? The behavior from the entitlement is just very degrading to society, berating. It's people don't feel appreciated in any job they do because people feel entitled for you to do that job for them.
Yeah, and entitlement is one of the key elements of narcissism. But I was just hearing, I want to say this because this is one of the things I I know, and this is how I wanted to, in my life, I want to get into the prisons and do this work. But I got so early, like the awareness of there are people that are spending their life in prison that are innocent. And, it's a lot of like black men. And all I could ever think about is, oh my God, that's not me. And that is someone is living that life. So I think I had just heard Carolyn May say a great thing. She goes, we are expecting too much out of one life. We are expecting the perfect soulmate, the perfect career, the perfect health. And I think, and that's where she kind of busts the spiritual narcissism, that we can just manifest every damn perfect thing in our lives. And instead of walking humbly, it's like, yes, what does that mean to manifest? And walking humbly in such gratitude for what we have.
Well, it's the both and of, yes, you are in so much control in your life, and also you have no control in your life.
You have no control.
And it is very egotistical, in my opinion, to just go, well, you can just manifest everything great you want into your life as long as you say the right mantra and create the right energy that pulls it in. And I go, that's beautiful, and I am very pro positive mindsets and everything like that. But I also find that's very egotistical and very controlling of the universe, as if you have the say of what is happening in the world.
It's just holding it with a real, with a real humility and sobriety.
Honoring our journeys. First the fall, then the recovery. From the fall, both and the mercy of God.
Both are.
Both are the mercy of God. Julian of Norwich.
Yeah. So she's the first, she wrote the book, supposedly the first woman author. She's Richard Rohr's favorite mystic, and had these showings, supposedly, where she just saw God's mercy and love. It's all God's mercy, fall, then the recovery of the fall, both on the mercy of God. Yesterday I wailed most of the day. I wished for nothing more than I had never met my necessary nemesis and had a relationship with him. If only I made the U-turn and ran away at what was the obvious choice every day I was in contact with him. I wept over the losses that came from all I went through and put others through. The fallout is still present. Laying there, I grieved over what was now gone. Broken and humbled, I sobbed. And yet, I'm in touch with love like I've never been before. I've been purified by my brokenness. The one who held me and wept with me told me that I was more whole, lovely, and alive because of my great fall. The suffering had done a most magnificent work in me and prepared me for my work in the world. It had also done a death and resurrection in him, the bounce, for which he was forever grateful. We held the loss and sadness and the bright hope that we came out with a greater capacity for love, truth, and awareness because of my great fall. I wish it could be different. I wish I could have gotten free from what was stuck in there without my necessary nemesis. I wish I could have figured it out through shadow work in the comfort of my own home. But I wouldn't be who I am today without the encounter. It brought what was hidden but hurting in me into the light where love and truth and the bounce could bring new life. We must honor our journeys that brought us here. So often there's no other way. It's all mercy in the economy of this great love that holds it all. It humbles us and gives us compassion and wisdom. The fall doesn't have to be the last word when we embrace the recovery, the bounce. We're made and remade more beautiful and full of love. We no longer forsake ourselves. May the lies that cause us to despair because of our bad choices never have the power to take us off course. May we honor our journeys that brought us here. May even our losses and pain rip us open from the self to which we once did cling to a spaciousness that holds so much more. Mystery has the last word, not our brokenness. When we know this, we're who we are, warts and all, and we never have to pretend otherwise. Humility and confidence make us a powerful influencer to change the world.
It is through our coming to know the truest self that we are transformed into something divine.
Mm-hmm.
Michael
Demkovich,
a Dominican priest and scholar.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something that's brought back to me when we were going back to the wounds. And Carolyn Mace actually said this. We were talking about the whole people using wounds as kind of a victim card, and also holding this understanding that, like, when you see homeless people, that their wounds were so many things unraveled structurally inside of them, from trauma, addiction, mental illness, victim thinking, whatever they didn't get, lack of mentoring.
Well, I like the different mindset of, so the ancient Greeks used to look at homeless people as how unlucky they are. And I feel like today we go, what a loser. As if they made all these decisions and chose this to be like this, versus back in ancient Greece, they truly understood that it was just luck that they weren't in that same position. And to me, I think that is, again, holding that grace of, we're just lucky to not be in that position. And when you look at it, then you have a lot more compassion and understanding, I think,
That's so
for
great.
where they're at.
And Carolyn Mace was saying, when people just see a homeless person say, get a job, and I know somebody would just go, she goes, my husband would go, get a job, get a job, get a job. And like, you don't understand, like, the structures that have been broken down in them, that they wouldn't even be able to in many cases, hold a job because of what they're dealing with.
Or as if a minimum wage job all of a sudden solves all your problems.
Or solves all the problems. And I remember Carolyn Mace going, people that say that are just really disconnected to the suffering and the situation.
I had someone else explain it too, of they don't want to realize that their success is also a form of luck, right? They're so into the ego of that they are a better person than that homeless person because they've been successful in life. And the idea that they really didn't have any control of it, they just kind of got lucky, that is unacceptable because they take so much pride in their accomplishments. And so they you can't accept that. So that's why they project that loser mindset onto those with less than them.
Yeah, it's an interesting. So it's like, how do we help in society bring the structures, the healing, the accountability, what we incentivize, like all these different complexities of the situation. And I felt maybe that's where the gratitude, maybe that's where the gift of what I've been through that gives me, I have such high levels of gratitude. Like, I float through life. I don't have a gratitude practice. Gratitude has me. But I knew that from some of the things that I went through, I come from a really successful family with a lot of structures interior structures to just keep going, that, genetically went in me. But there are things I thought, if I didn't have the support that I had, even though I didn't get the help ideally that I needed, but the support system, I could have, like, what if I could have been on the side of the street shooting up or become a prostitute or, I mean, it's just and I knew that what I have been given. And if we can open our eyes to where we see love and the gifts of, the mentoring.
Well, and emphasizing on what we've been given, this question, what fall or event outside your control needs to be honored in you because it brought you here. From my own experience, anytime I share any real difficult situation that I've been through with people, they really do go to, the natural, oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, the beautiful sympathy that people have. And I really turn to them and go, well, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, so I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean it with every ounce of my body, but it's wild how often people are so shocked by it. How people go, oh, so if you truly had the control of the world, that's not something you would change? And I go, no, because if I didn't learn that lesson, the person I am would have became is not the person I want to be. And that is truly the truth of how you can accept these terrible things happening in your life. Is so much easier once you truly accept who you are and love who you are. I love myself so much that my struggles have made me into the person that I love. And so without them, I probably wouldn't love the man I am.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Deepak says something, he goes, even if it's not true, if you look at your life as though you are responsible for every single thing that happened to you, there is a different energy of which you will, and you could almost take responsibility to go, oh, this is my karmic path, that this was going to happen, that non-resistance, this is my lot in life, that this all happened.
In what ways do you still not trust the bounce? That our wounds that lead us astray will be transformed into our greatest healings. If we take the transformational path, is it through our coming to know the truest self that we are transformed into something divine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really, I think what we were talking about of no longer looking at our hardships as an issue but a blessing is, to me, the ultimate bounce.
Yeah, and I think it's about being willing to do the work. And the truth is we are weak as a society to do the work to break the patterns.
There's something you've said too of I don't know if it's in this quote or in this book or you've got it from but you said, I did not heal from my trauma till I took responsibility for my trauma. No matter what anyone did to me, I played a role in it, and the healing can't begin until I acknowledge the place that I stood in it. And to me, that is the most powerful thing of all that we teach is no matter what happened to you, you played somewhat of a role, and the healing cannot begin until you step into that power of that role. And to me, that is the ultimate bounce.
Yeah, I would say one thing I'm confessing is, as much as I wanted the ego dissolving, where my ego really tripped me up in life. Almost that the ego being like this willfulness and not listening to my survival instincts or wisdom. It's so, and yet to only have compassion on the ego, right? The ego judges the ego. Just having compassion the way God, like I can talk about this, but the more we understand numinous love, the more, like Julian of Norwich had these experiences that she then spent 20 years writing about, these encounters, to see it's like basically numinous love, that God just looks upon everything with so much compassion. And so I look upon my ego with compassion, not with disgust, with just love. I can feel numinous love energy pouring out of me toward me. And then that is how I can look upon someone else and never judge them. Only have discernment. But back onto this thing is, I think where people don't believe in the bounce is because they haven't done the work, so they're not experiencing the bounce. Say they were raised with someone who was violent and a rageaholic, and then they have become sort of that way, and they don't believe they can change, is because you've got to do the work, and you've got to do the ego work, because it's where is the ego even allowing ourselves, feeling entitled enough to indulge in that behavior. And that would be the deepest regret from the abuse, is not that it happened to me, Riley,
But that you didn't learn from it?
that what came out, not that I didn't learn from it, that it caused things in me that were not there before. Like I would have been a much better mother had I not gone through the things with the cult leader. And because I wouldn't have had that trauma or that impatience or that fear, or the way I like left spiritual parts of myself behind because they were so...
Probably wouldn't have been such a screamer.
A screamer. Yeah, I screamed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that also, I would tie that a lot to the not having any help.
Right. I mean, I think that
And the
screaming comes from the powerlessness.
The powerlessness and the fear. Because I actually believe we should never do that to anyone.
Yeah,
I
don't think there's the value.
There's no value. There's no value in that at all. Yeah.
Well, honoring our journeys, I think that's something everyone can take with them in embracing their own journey in life. And I will end with one of the quotes we started with: first the fall, then the recovery from the fall. Both are the mercy of God, and may them both be the blessings in your life. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of the Infinity Loop group. Until next time, thanks again for joining us, and please share, like, and subscribe. Have a blessed day.